They hid this from you for years, but now it's been revealed. You're about to see something that has never made headlines before, a hidden piece of information kept from the public eye by one of the most powerful institutions on the planet, NASA. For decades, officially released space maps have been treated as simple scientific records. But what if I told you that within these seemingly harmless images lies a hidden code, a mysterious pattern that has gone unnoticed even by experts, or maybe has not gone unnoticed, just been purposely censored? The details you are about to discover have been carefully scrubbed from reports, omitted from documentaries, and made taboo within the scientific community itself. This is no ordinary conspiracy theory. This is visual evidence, real records, which may have been encoded with messages, symbols, or coordinates, inserted in strategic locations as if they were part of something much larger. And the most disturbing? Many of these codes seem to point to locations on Earth and beyond, locations that coincidentally are involved in numerous reports of sightings, disappearances, and unexplained gravitational anomalies. Why was this never reported on national television? Why was this information treated as irrelevant? The truth is simple and disturbing. Somebody doesn't want you to see this. Someone, is deciding what is truth and what you should or shouldn't know. But now, the veil that covered this data is about to fall. Independent scientists, space hackers, and alternative researchers have been reporting for years that certain NASA star maps have strange overlaps, pixelated areas, repeating zones, all disguised as technical glitches. But is that really all there is to it? Or are we looking at an intentional code, embedded within the images themselves, waiting for someone to decode what should never have been seen? Brace yourself. The mystery goes far beyond what you imagine, because maps don't just show us the way, they can hide who traced them. And according to the most recent analyses, some of the information hidden in these files does not correspond to known natural patterns. There is something, or someone, trying to communicate in a subtle, symbolic way, camouflaged among stars, shadows, and geographical contours that escape the inattentive eye. Something that may have been left as a mark, a signature, a warning. And in this video, for the first time, we're going to show you what has finally been revealed. This isn't speculation. These are files. These are images. These are real marks. Evidence that was right in front of us. And that is now beginning to be deciphered. The so-called NASA maps are, officially, geographic and cosmic representations obtained by satellites, probes, and telescopes that monitor both the Earth and remote regions of the universe. They appear in scientific studies, climate reports, space exploration simulations, and even on public platforms such as Google Earth. But behind this veneer of scientific neutrality, a growing group of researchers believe they are looking at something much bigger and much more disturbing. These are layers of information that have not only been forgotten, they have been deliberately hidden. Details that do not appear in press releases, institutional videos, or official interviews. Blurred areas, geometric distortions that repeat themselves in strategics, regions of the globe, spots with symmetrical patterns in deep space, and all of this apparently without any plausible technical justification. It is at this point that the mystery intensifies. These scholars claim that we are not talking about simple rendering errors or image processing failures, but rather intentional human interventions made with the clear purpose of hiding something. And the more they investigate, the more inexplicable patterns emerge, feeding the theory that there is a hidden code operating under the guise of traditional science. A code that no one taught us to read, but which is now beginning to show its shape. And when we talk about code, we're not talking about random numbers or meaningless gibberish. We're talking about precise coordinates of geometric symbols that are repeated in different parts of the globe and the universe. Imagine looking at a NASA satellite map and, by applying contrast and brightness filters, starting to notice symmetrical marks as if they were ancient inscriptions. Straight lines cutting through the desert where there should be nothing. Perfect circles on the ocean floor, positioned with millimeter precision, forming a pattern that refers to ancient constellations. In some records, there is even something even more disturbing. Number sequence hidden in image layers that only appear when certain color channels are isolated. Independent researchers have managed to identify what appears to be a universal symbolic language, something that refers to both ancient cultures and pure mathematics. The most impressive thing is that these elements always appear in strategic locations: UFO sighting points, restricted access military zones, regions mentioned in ancient religious manuscripts. The repetition of these patterns cannot be ignored. Coincidence? Traditional science has not yet commented, but the evidence points to something much bigger, something that may be trying to communicate with us in a subtle, camouflaged way, waiting for us to decipher what, for so long, has been before our eyes without us noticing. What is most intriguing is that these anomalies aren't confined to one or two isolated images. Over the years, dozens of images released by NASA have been analyzed by independent experts, graphics engineers, amateur astronomers, and even former NASA employees. And they've all come to eerily similar conclusions. There's something going on here, deliberately turned off. Reports point to entire sections of maps being replaced with artificially blurred areas with pixels replicated to simulate natural continuity, a technique known as patch visual, used precisely to mask elements. In 2018, a Russian researcher presented a sequence of images comparing two maps of Antarctica released by NASA at different times. One showed strange rock formations in an inhospitable area. In the second, these formations were completely erased, as if they had never existed. Another emblematic case involves records of the lunar soil, where, according to image processing experts, there are shadows that cannot be justified by natural light angles. And then the reports emerge. Amateurs who capture, for seconds, rectangular structures floating in space. Images that mysteriously disappear from servers a few hours later. With each new piece of evidence, the suspicion grows that we are dealing with a systematic cover-up, a coordinated effort to prevent certain details from coming to light. As this evidence began to circulate, the scientific community found itself divided. Some experts prefer to remain silent. They ignore the questions, look away, and continue with their research as if nothing were happening. But there are those who have dared to speak out. "This information makes no sense from a geological point of view," declared a European geophysicist, when analyzing an image of Greenland that showed rectangular patterns in the deep ice, as if something had been buried there for millennia. Meanwhile, an American astrophysicist, on condition of anonymity, revealed in a closed conference that there are censorship zones in NASA databases, where metadata is purposefully erased. According to him, there are coordinates that, when entered, return corrupted or distorted data, something that could not happen accidentally. Another scientist, this time specialized in spectral imaging, reported that certain celestial maps published on the agency's official website presented overlays that were incompatible with the optical capture standard. "It's as if someone tried to hide a light that shouldn't be there," he said. Even among the most skeptical, a quiet unease is growing. There are no official answers. There are no public retractions. What there are redacted documents, removed images, and a growing number of experts uncomfortable with what they are finding. And it is precisely in this uncomfortable silence from official science that theories begin to gain strength. Some of them seem like fiction, but the more details are connected, the more sense they make to those who observe carefully. One of the most widespread suggests that these changes in the maps are not just attempts to hide flaws or technical failures, but rather a deliberate effort to cover up non-human structures. That's right. buildings that do not belong to our civilization, buried in strategic points of the planet, especially in the most inhospitable regions such as Antarctica, the bottom of the oceans, and even lunar craters. Some say that these places shelter dimensional portals, entrances to parallel realities described in ancient texts and religious manuscripts that speak of windows between worlds. Other theories speak of active alien bases, hidden under layers of ice or camouflaged with technology invisible to our eyes, but not to satellite sensors, which would have captured these geometric shapes with absurd precision. A group of esoteric scholars even compared the patterns identified on the maps with symbols found on pyramids in Egypt and Mesoamerica, suggesting that ancient civilizations were already aware of the existence of these anomalies and tried to record them in a symbolic way. The coincidence of shapes between structures in space and ancient sacred patterns is far from being ignored. These mysterious patterns found on NASA maps do not appear in isolation. They seem to be in line with a series of other enigmas that are already known and widely discussed by alternative researchers and curious people around the world. When we superimpose these hidden codes on the censored regions of Google Earth, for example, the coincidence is obvious. The same areas that appear distorted or blurred in NASA's records are also inaccessible on Google's platform. Entire areas in Antarctica, specific portions of the Sahara Desert, and even regions in the Pacific Ocean simply do not load or display images in low definition. And this leads us to wonder, could these large companies be working together to hide something that goes beyond what we imagine? And it doesn't stop there. The Nazca lines themselves in Peru seem to take on new meaning when analyzed from this perspective. The geoglyphs, visible only from the sky, resemble directional markers, as if they were pointing to something buried or hidden, precisely aligned with constellations and possible entry routes to something yet to be revealed. For years, researchers have been identifying structures and images of the lunar surface that defy any natural explanation. Towers, domes, hexagonal shapes, all of this recorded in archives that, curiously, disappeared after public complaints were made by former employees linked to secret space programs. What if these clues were there all along, waiting for humanity to be ready to understand? This is the question that increasingly troubles minds around the world. Perhaps it was never about hiding everything completely, but rather about allowing only those who are attentive, those who see beyond the obvious, to gradually discover what is hidden. What if the codes on the maps, the blurred areas, the symbols lost in the ice and stars are, in fact, invitations? Invitations to look deeper, to question what we have been told is true, to understand that there is much more behind what is shown to us. Since the most ancient times, ancient cultures have spoken of signs that would only be understood when the time was right. Prophecies spoke of the awakening of a new understanding, and sacred texts warned that the heavens would speak to the attentive. Science, for all its precision, seems to increasingly collide with mysteries that it itself cannot decipher. And in this clash between the rational and the inexplicable, a new type of search emerges, a search for meaning, for purpose, for connection with something greater. Perhaps these maps don't just show places. Perhaps they reveal trajectories, paths to discoveries that require not only technology, but consciousness. And that's when everything starts to make sense, even if we don't yet have all the answers. But what if the most shocking thing of all is something that no one is really prepared to accept? Amidst all the data, symbols, censored zones, and hidden patterns, a revelation has begun to emerge. And it completely changes how we think about these maps. It's not just about hiding information. It's about modify them in real time. That's right, there is concrete evidence that some images on NASA and Google Earth servers are being dynamically changed, with algorithms that replace certain coordinates with other fake images whenever a user tries to access that specific region. A researcher managed to capture this process happening live. With each new attempt, the exact location appeared with a slightly different pattern, as if something or someone was constantly rewriting the truth. This raises a disturbing question. Are we really seeing reality as it is? Or has everything we are shown, maps, records, videos, already passed through invisible filters that shape what we can and cannot know? What if these edits are not just technical, but deliberately manipulated by an intelligence beyond our human understanding? A force that decides what must remain hidden and what can be slowly revealed, fragment by fragment, until the whole truth comes to light. And now, after everything you've seen, the question that remains in the air is inevitable. What if none of what they show us is actually real? What if the maps are just a distorted reflection of what we are not allowed to see? With so much evidence of manipulation, censorship, hidden codes, forgotten symbols, and inexplicable patterns, how can we trust what is presented as scientific truth? Perhaps the great revelation will never come from an official conference or a newspaper headline, but rather from the sum of small details, fragments left for those who have the courage to look deeper. Because while most ignore it, some are already beginning to wake up. And the truth, no matter how hidden it may be, always finds a way to emerge. But that is, of course, if you are ready to see what few dare to question. What about you? Do you believe that NASA is hiding something? Do you think that this evidence is real proof of greater knowledge kept secret from humanity? Comment below. I want to know the truth. Your opinion is a fundamental part of this search for answers. If you've come this far, you're already one of those who see beyond the veil. Like it right now, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next revelations, and share this video with anyone you know who is ready for this conversation. And of course, watch the next video that's appearing on the screen. It continues exactly where this one ended.